Ayatollah Khamenei would be alive, chilling with Kim Jong-un right now if he had got nukes like Kim Jong-un did. Let's just be very real about that. There's a reason why Pakistan and North Korea, which destabilize their region much more than some would say Iran, are fine because they have nukes.
Today we are looking at a debate moment that the mainstream media does not want you to see. Mehdi Hasan, one of the sharpest political journalists alive right now, sat down on trigonometry, and what happened next left the entire room struggling to keep up. Because Mehdi didn't just argue, he brought a timeline, he brought receipts, and he systematically dismantled every single talking point about Iran, Trump, and this war, one fact at a time. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to see the Middle East situation completely differently than you did 5 minutes ago.
Israel's war goals and interests are actually very clear. I'm very unclear as to what the US wants.
Well, if it is the nuclear program, I think we're both unclear, but if it is the nuclear program, I don't think they know. But if it is the nuclear program, this is not the way to do it. Negotiations are the way to solve Israel. There is no, most experts say you cannot bomb away a nuclear program. It's in people's heads. It's scientific expertise. You cannot kill every scientist and academic.
You can destroy the nuclear material.
And then they can then years later, they can rebuild facilities and enrich again.
Sure.
And then you're just mowing the lawn, as the Israelis say, go in and bomb every couple of years. But we had a JCPOA. We had a deal that was working. The IAEA said Iran was in compliance with it. Do you know how much enriched uranium they had under the JCPOA? 3.64%. You know how much they have now? 60%. You know, you want to go back to logic. Logic tells me that was a failure to get out of that deal.
I mean, I also don't think there's any huge evidence that negotiations produce nuclear non-proliferation. I just think this is a very...
Come on.
I think it's
the entire history of the post-war era.
Well, if you look at Ukraine, for example, Ukraine was forced to give away its nuclear weapons and made itself very vulnerable. And I've been on record as saying, I think that in and of itself and the fact that we haven't supported Ukraine properly will lead to more nuclear proliferation.
I agree with you on that.
And I think on this issue too, I don't see what the incentive would be for Iran not to pursue nuclear weapons.
Well, we're in agreement, but not just Iran. So I interviewed, again, if you guys remember the Iraq War, do you remember Mohammed al-Baradei? He was the head of the IAEA.
Yes.
Him and Hans Blix went to the UN and said, don't invade Iraq. We can
We were both against the war in Iraq.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying this to you, because I know you understand. He said, we can guarantee disarmament. He was the head of the nuclear watchdog, spent his life opposing nuclear proliferation. I interviewed him recently. I said, if you were in the Turkish government right now, which Israel is saying is next, would you try and get nukes? And he said, yes. I was astonished. This is a man who's devoted his life. Because, as you say, everyone now has an incentive to get nukes. Why would you not?
No, my point was even broader than that, Mehdi, which is that I think everyone always has the incentive to get nukes. And that's where I don't think negotiating with Iran...
So that's where we disagree.
Hold on. Well, let me finish the point, though. I don't think that's... In that situation, I don't think Iran has any interest in that. Iran is very clearly... The reason the Gulf Arab states and Israel all want Iran degraded and all supported this conflict, by the way, and are still encouraging it, the Gulf states, especially internally. The people at the top, the people on the street may not, is because Iran wants to dominate the region. It's a perfectly legitimate thing for Iran to want to do. But that being the case, the fact that they fund proxies to facilitate that process, of course they'd want nuclear weapons, and I don't think they'd negotiate them away.
But they already did negotiate them away. According to US intelligence, they suspended whatever nuclear weapons research they were doing in 2003 after the fall of Saddam because they didn't want Bush to invade them. There was also a fatwa from the late Ayatollah Khamenei saying that nuclear weapons are haram, forbidden under Islamic law, which is ironic. People are now saying, I hear supporters of Khamenei saying, that was a mistake. He should have actually got
But under him,
weapons.
They did enrich more uranium.
But they didn't build weapons. Enriching uranium is their right under the NPT. Every country has a right to enrich uranium. No, not to 60%. That was a bargaining.
But they did.
That was a bargaining chip.
Well,
why did they enrich to 60%?
Because they're saying, if you keep pushing us,
exactly.
if you keep...
Israel attacked them, so they went to 60%. They only went to... You say Iran wants to dominate. This is why it's so important for your viewers to understand the timelines here. I know in the West, we're kind of brainwashed by some of our media and politicians to believe that Iran is this Hitler country. And again...
I'm not saying that.
But I didn't say you said that. I said some in our media and politicians, brainwashed over the years. Trigonometry is a great show. It hasn't been here for decades. I'm talking about the last 30, 40 years. Have been told Iran is the great, just like Iranians say the great Satan, Iran is also the great rogue state in the Middle East. Actually, when you look at it, Iran is the country that is actually now being bombed, was attacked from 1980 to 1988 by our ally Saddam Hussein, attacked with chemical weapons, lost 500,000 people, had their planes shot down by the United States of America. And then they agreed to a negotiated deal with the American government in good faith, and with the EU, by the way. The JCPOA was with the US and the EU. Iran stuck to that deal. Trump tore it up. Trump violated that deal by pulling out of it. As I said, they then began to increase enrichment only after the deal was done. So I don't accept your premise when you say, of course, they want to get nuclear weapons and enrich. No, they signed the JCPOA, which says in the first paragraph, we will never get nuclear weapons. That's what they signed on
But
to.
they then took that money and used it to fund their terrorist
Okay, but now you're moving the
proxies
goalposts. I just want to stick with your nuclear point. No, you made a very strong point about nuclear. They have an incentive to get nuclear weapons. I'm saying there's no evidence of that. It's the exact reverse.
The incentive is clear. You're saying
now they have an incentive for sure. They just got attacked.
They always did.
Well, of course. I mean,
if you want to be
strategically, yes, there was
right.
But the irony is they didn't. That's the irony. If they did, they'd be fine. Ayatollah Khamenei would be alive, chilling with Kim Jong-un right now if he had got nukes like Kim Jong-un did. Let's just be very real about that. There's a reason why Pakistan and North Korea, which destabilize their region much more than some would say Iran, are fine because they have nukes.
Stop right there. Did you just hear that? Mehdi just laid out the entire nuclear timeline in under 2 minutes, and Constantine had no real answer. Here is what most people completely miss. Iran signed the JCPOA. The International Energy Agency confirmed they stuck to it. Every single step toward higher enrichment came after something was done to Iran first. That is not opinion. That is a documented sequence of events, and yet somehow in most Western news coverage, that timeline just disappears. Mehdi is not letting that slide today.
We're in complete agreement.
But Iran didn't get nukes. This is the great irony here. They didn't get nukes. They got attacked. The leader got killed. And now I'm hearing you say it's because they wanted to get nukes. It's the exact opposite. If they had gotten nukes, they'd been in a much safer place. Instead, he put out a fatwa saying no nukes. He signed up to the JCPOA, which many Iranian hardliners were against. Khamenei signed on to a deal that people in his own country said we shouldn't sign on to. They then stuck to the deal, according to the IEA. Trump then tore up the deal. They then marginally increased enrichment to 20%. They then got attacked by Israel in 2021, increased to 60%, and then last year got attacked during negotiations. And again, this year got attacked during negotiations. And one last point, the Gulf countries, it's just not true. The Omani foreign minister just wrote a piece for The Economist magazine. Oman got bombed by Iran. And even he's saying, it's very rational for Iran to do what it's doing. This is an Israeli war that America's been dragged into. America needs to be independent from Israel. The Qataris, I've spoken to very senior Qataris privately, who of course are mad that Iran are bombing their oil gas fields, but they know who they blame. They know who started the war. It was Israel and the United States, and they're reaching out to the US, telling the US, stop this. So maybe the Saudis, maybe the Emiratis wanted this war, but not all of the Gulf countries. That's just not true.
Fine.
So it's really interesting that you're talking about, the bombing of facilities, gas facilities, etc. Because one of the worries for me, Mehdi, is how this is going to affect ordinary Americans. And I don't actually think that we've been focused on that enough. So let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Let's talk about why it's so important. Let's talk about why shutting it down is not potentially catastrophic, is catastrophic for the global economy, but for Americans and Brits and the West in particular.
It's a disaster. So we just ran a piece by Ilan Goldenberg, who was a senior official on foreign policy under Barack Obama and Joe Biden. He conducted war games for the United States government on what would happen if they attacked Iran, because they were doing the JCPOA. They had to have a backup in case it all goes pear-shaped. If we go to war, this is Obama time. He says the worst case scenario of the war games is what's happening right now.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because Mehdi just dropped the name Ilhan Goldenberg, a man who literally ran war games for the United States government, not a Twitter pundit, not a podcast guy, someone whose actual job was to simulate what happens if America goes to war with Iran. And his conclusion, that the worst case scenario from those simulations is exactly what is unfolding right now in real time. When a former government insider says this is the nightmare we planned for, that is not a political opinion. That is an alarm bell.
That's kind of scary when you hear someone who's in government saying that. He wrote that piece for us and he said, look, the Strait of Hormuz was always going to be the Iranian leverage. It was always going to be the choke point. When Donald Trump comes out and says, we didn't know they would do this, we didn't know they would attack the Gulf countries, I mean, it's idiocy of the highest order. It's like COVID all over again. He mishandled a major national crisis because he was incompetent, not just ideologically doing the wrong thing. And again, we have these people like Hegseth and Trump who are completely out of their depth, running this war and saying stupid things like, well, we didn't know about the Strait of Hormuz. I just saw reporting the other day that the Brits and the Poles and the Germans all have minesweeping carriers that could have been of use. The Brits pulled ours out. I don't know where the German one is. But meanwhile, Trump is just attacking all the allies, saying, we don't need anyone from NATO. We don't need you. He's doing all caps, late night, insane, deranged posts on Truth Social. He doesn't know how to run a war. He doesn't know how to keep allies on board. Again, I'm going to have to go home and take a shower after praising George Bush. But even George Bush, a war criminal who should be in The Hague, created a coalition of the willing with a bunch of countries. Not the big countries, but some, what was it called? New Europe, Rumsfeld called it. This guy can't even build together a coalition. He didn't even tell his allies before he decided, as you say, to create massive economic chaos for everyone in the world. And we're speaking on a day, Francis, where the Treasury Secretary just announced, we may unsanction Iranian oil. Isn't that, I don't say hilarious because it's such a tragic war and people are dying. But bizarre that 3 weeks into this war, the result of this war is Iran's oil is unsanctioned. That's insane.
And that right there is what happens when you bring slogans to a facts fight. Trump said they didn't know Iran would target the Gulf. Mehdi's response basically translates to every war planner in Washington knew. Every allied government knew. The Strait of Hormuz has been the most obvious pressure point in this entire region for decades. And yet here we are. No coalition, no allied coordination, and brace yourself, the Treasury Secretary floating the idea of unsanctioning Iranian oil 3 weeks into the same war that was supposedly about stopping Iran. If that doesn't make your head spin, watch this clip one more time. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Did Mehdi land every point, or did Constantine have a leg to stand on? Like the video if this opened your eyes, subscribe so you never miss breakdowns like this, and I will see you in the next one.